Welcome to this week in Sutures and Cents, where we typically talk clinical to business, business to clinical, and clinical to clinical, and business to business. I'm Mark Copeland, I'm the Value Analysis Whisperer, but today we're going to do something a little different. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that's outside of medical device, for now, called name, image, and likeness. Now, why the heck are we going to talk about that on my podcast? Partly because I want to. Find it to be a fascinating subject, and I think it's changing the entire landscape of college athletics. Well, there's a news flash. But it's also, I think it's actually an opportunity for some small med device companies. I'm actually going to dip my toe into it likely later this year to promote our business. But in the meantime, I have a guest on today, and little background. I've known this guy since like 1984, Scott Pera. He's a former Division I head basketball coach. Most recently, he was the head basketball coach at Rice University in Houston, Texas, one of the best academic institutions on the planet. And Scott and I go way back. He's from my hometown, although we went to competitive high schools. He's a little bit older than me. So while he was starting on great Hershey high school teams that went undefeated in conference, won 2 conference championships, I was sitting on the bench as a lame sophomore at Palmyra High School. But we've known each other for a long time. Scott would go on to win a state championship as a head basketball coach at tiny little Annville, Cleona, Pennsylvania, and then moved to California with his wife and won a state championship in California with a dude who played for him from 8th grade on, who maybe you've heard of, James Harden. And then Scott went to Arizona State as an assistant for Herb Sendek. James followed him there. And then James went on to be an MVP in the NBA and is still playing, a first ballot Hall of Famer. And Scott has been an assistant coach at Penn, and then obviously the head coach at Rice. I was an assistant there for another friend of mine, Mike Rhodes, who's now the head basketball coach at Penn State. So while I haven't been a coach in a long time, I still have a lot of close friends that are still in it. And Scott is going to come on and talk to me about NIL. And it's sort of kissing cousin, the transfer portal that sort of mixes some things in. Now, why? Well, so many people in med device are actually former college athletes, as you guys know. So many of my listeners are. And I also think it's I just think it's an interesting topic. But I also think med device companies have an opportunity to take advantage of some things that get some cheap or borderline free marketing by using something like NIL very creatively and in a way that's respectful, businesslike, and honorable, not in some icky way that I think some people think NIL is. I don't know. We'll discuss it. We're gonna try to answer a bunch of questions that people have and go deep and be very simple about it. And hopefully you find it interesting. So my guest, Scott Pera, can be heard every week on Everything College Basketball, a great podcast that he does with a couple of young folks who really cover college basketball in a very in-depth way. And you got the NCAA tournament coming. If you want to pick your bracket, I would start listening to these guys. They actually know what they're talking about. All right, so I'm here with my buddy, Coach Scotty Pera, who I will likely call SP, Scott, Scotty, Coach, whatever, because I did an intro, Scott. Like I told people, we know each other since like 1985. You know,
you're old.
When your teams were drilling my high school and I was riding pine as a skinny little 10th grade dork.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, long time ago. So, SP, let's talk about NIL, name, image, and likeness, right? You and I talk about this and text about it a lot because you live in that world and I'm fascinated by it, right? So, I mean, you do, like you're going to coach. If you're coaching in it, you're immersed in it. And I just think you have insights and understanding of this that people in my audience, my audience is a bunch of ex-athletes. They're all med device people, and a lot of them are college athletes, right? So many people have a favorite team. So let's talk about NIL, name, image, and likeness. How the heck did this hit this sports environment that we follow so closely and that you work in? When did this all happen?
Years ago, with a case that started when Ed O'Bannon, who ironically went to Artesia High School.
I forgot about that.
I,
Yeah.
I didn't coach him there. He was before I got there, but he's an Artesia guy. And Ed O'Bannon and Sonny Vaccaro, who was always an advocate for these athletes. That was Sonny's. He in many different ways. He was always an advocate to help the kids, right? And Ed O'Bannon and Sonny combined to basically say, if we're going to be in this, what is it? I believe it was the EA Sports.
Yeah, it was EA Sports,
video game.
It was. Yeah, it was sponsored.
Yeah, and you're going to put number 31 on UCLA and sell 50 billion copies.
Yeah.
Why is number 31 in UCLA not getting any royalties for this?
Yeah, you could understand. And by the way, for people who don't know, Sonny Vaccaro was the guy in the movie Air that Matt Damon played, right? So like he's well known in basketball, but now he's sort of become much better known outside of it because of that movie. But so I didn't realize Vaccaro was involved with that O'Bannon house. Yeah. So O'Bannon plays in 93, 94 in that era, wins a national championship, plays in the NBA, and then is back like he's turned professional in something else, as they say. I think he was selling cars.
In Vegas.
Right? Yeah.
In Vegas.
Okay. And they were selling a video game with his likeness, an image. I don't know if his name was on it or not. I'm not sure, but they were making.
But it was number
money.
31, 6'8" UCLA forward,
left-handed dude, like that. Yeah. Oh yeah, I think I know who that is. Right. Yeah. So okay, so they sue, and I looked it up, and they won something like, depending on how you look at it, they won something like $1.5 million awarded to them, but then something like $44 million in attorney's fees or something. But it was significant, and it was kind of groundbreaking because it was, let me see, it was a class action, right? So like there were a bunch of people whose images or names or likenesses had been used. And I think it also, I don't know, did it address like them selling somebody's uniform?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. So let me relate this to my world.
Yeah.
So when I was at, so this is, when I was at Arizona State, those of you who don't know, I coached James Harden in high school. James Harden came with me to Arizona State. Well, James Harden basically turned Arizona State's program around in 1 year. We went from 8 wins 1 year to 21 wins the next. And so I remember saying to myself back then, there's 15,000 people in this arena wearing an Arizona State number 13 jersey, and I can't buy James Harden a cheeseburger.
Right. And James didn't get anything for that.
Yeah, he got nothing, zero.
Right.
And so I thought something is wrong here, because the school is now selling out the gym because of him. They're making the money on the merchandise because of him. Now, I didn't do anything about it, just besides be frustrated, but I didn't think it was right. And so then when this O'Bannon, Sonny, all this stuff started happening, I'm like, yeah, I mean, so that was the original intentions of NIL. Let's start there. Jerseys. Well, we can go into companies hiring in a little bit, but so that was kind of like, that relates to everybody, right? The quarterback for Alabama, number 12, Joe Namath, whoever, whatever it was, Greg McElroy, or in today's terms. And so the point is that everybody's making all this money for these schools, and these kids are, they're on scholarship, but that doesn't, it pales in comparison to the millions that are being made by the school because of them. Right.
And I looked up some of these numbers. So like the NFL basically does about 17 billion a year in annual revenue. It was hard. It's funny. MLB and NBA both came back at exactly the same number. So I'm skeptical of it. They were both like at 11.34 billion a year. The NCAA college athletics. Now, you may know a little bit about this more than me. The number that I found online from a couple different sources was 1.3 billion annual revenue, but 1 billion of it comes from the NCAA March Madness tournament. But I suspect there's more money in that. That's, I think, the NCAA revenue. I don't know if that captures like everything that's what you and I would consider college athletics around it, but I'm not sure. But just to give people a sense of the size of the business of college athletics, it's a little hard to figure out, but it's at least, generally speaking, if you just look at the NCAA, their revenue on an annual basis is about $1.3 billion. And oddly, I would have thought more came from football. Like 75% of it came from the TV deal for the NCAA hoops tournament. Did you know that? I didn't know that.
Yeah, but I also think there's some division between the playoff,
Yeah.
the football playoff, and the NCAA.
Well, that's not the college, like the college football playoff that I know you're interested in. It's a big game. You're a Notre Dame fan. I don't think that's an NCAA event.
Correct.
Right? Okay. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, there's all kinds of. It's hard to capture this, but
don't be confused by those numbers.
Yeah, and suffice to say, they're big business.
Yes.
As no one's surprised. And so some of the problems. Okay, so O'Bannon wins this lawsuit and is allowed to use his name, image, and likeness. That's literally where NIL came from. And then in, I think, 2019, looks like, and you weren't there anymore, but you lived out there. State of California did the fair pay to play, allowing athletes to be compensated for promotional activities.
And now these states, so this is part of the issue. Like this can get confusing here, but one of the issues is there is no blanket. So the states kind of went, I don't want to say rogue, but on their own. Each state can do what they want. The laws are different in each state. The how it's written, how the contracts, and we'll get to that stuff later too. It's all different. Started by California making their own ruling.
Right. So they were the first. So then there were 49 states that didn't have anything. Now it sounds like a bunch of states have their own. Some still don't. And it sounds like if you're in a state that doesn't, you have to sort of defer. You defer to somebody's ruling, but I don't know. It's not like the Supreme Court. Well, the Supreme Court did kind of make some kind of ruling on this, but to like the people listening to this, like Scott's on the forefront of this. And it changes every damn day, it seems like. So, like, we're doing this podcast, but we could be outdated in a month because there could be everything from an NCAA guidance.
Which there is a big one that just came down the road.
Right. So talk about that.
Well, starting, I believe the date is July 1st. And okay, so let me back up. So if people are wondering why these numbers have grown so much for these football players this winter in the transfer portal, is because there's actually excess amount of money because the schools that opted into these pay your own players get $20 million on July 1st. So if you already have a pool in a collective of 20 million, now you know you have 40 million. So the Miami quarterback who says, I'm not going to the NFL because he's getting 4 million to go to Miami. Yeah, that 4 million for Carson Beck may not look like 4 million next year just because of how right now these guys are in the perfect time. They're trying to make some sort of rules. They're letting the schools pay the kids, but in the meantime, there's still all this money that's been raised in the collective on the outside, which we'll get to that in a minute too. Right. So it's like flowing on their heads right now.
Yeah. So it is such a moving picture that we are doing our best to slow it down and describe it and potentially answer some questions. But again, the waters are still fast moving here. Okay, so let's back up again, like you said. So you referenced a collective. So Scott, let's talk about this. Pick a university, Alabama, right? Big football, big basketball, big sports. Stanford, you could say, although they might not be a good example, but let's just say a big school that has a big commitment to athletics.
Most of the Power Fours cope, any of the Power Fours.
Right. So how do they structure these? Like, who runs it? So give me that breakdown.
Okay. So there was when people started to skirt the system, which is what everybody does, because NIL, name, image, and likeness, is one thing. If I own a car dealer and I want to have the quarterback at Notre Dame, Riley Leonard, do advertisements for Pera's, car dealership in South Bend, I can pay him. And okay, that's name, image, and likeness. I mean, he's being paid to do something. Do advertisements, promote it, show up and sign autographs, whatever. Okay,
could that be done separate from these collectives, which we'll touch on?
That's why I'm starting there.
Okay.
So forget the collective for now. That's kind of name, image, and likeness. I'm using his name and his image to sell cars and pay him to do it.
Right.
Okay. Well, since there are so few laws established and the NCAA has no leg to stand on because they lose every lawsuit that they're involved in, rich people at these schools started saying, well, we're just going to pay them. We're just going to start. There was two kinds to start. I want to say, was it 529? Anyway, there's two. One where they could donate and it could be written off taxable.
501c. It was a 501c, which is
they got banned because that's not with the intent of the 501c, but that's what they tried first.
Right.
Okay, can't do that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start a collective. We're going to call the Alabama one. We're going to call it the whatever Tide.
High Tide, like that guy in the commercial says. We'll call it High Tide.
We're going to call it High Tide LLC. Please, all you donors that want to get great players, donate to High Tide LLC. Sorry, you can't write it off, right?
Right.
High Tide LLC collects all this money. Let's just use a number of $10 million. The coaches then talk with the head of the collective. And okay, so you said who starts these? An ex-player, a friend of the coach.
A big donor at the school.
Could be.
Less so?
As long as they don't work for the school.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot like a lot of ex-players, Brady Quinn at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of ex-players have started these. So then the head of the collective says, "Hey, coach, how much are we paying Johnny, and how much are we paying Jimmy, and how much are we paying Bobby, and how much and
Olivia,
whoever."
Yeah.
Because
we'll talk about Olivia Dunn too. Yeah.
Correct. And so then how look, this will take us into a whole nother area in a minute, but what is done then is, okay, Jimmy, I work for the High Tide Collective. You've been promised $1 million NIL. We're going to do it in 10 $100,000 payments every month on the 31st of the month. Here's the contract. Sign it. Boom, 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 boom. That's one way.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Are there maybe you're going to, I know you're going to answer this. Are there expectations laid out in that contract for appearances?
No.
Nothing.
No.
This is strictly.
Originally, everybody was thinking they had to do that.
Yeah.
Then they're like, no, they don't.
Right. Because there's nobody making them do it.
No, you don't. Here's your money. So basically, now what schools have had to do is they've had to actually create in the department, probably even hire a person on NLI education for the athletes, because they don't look at 18. I don't understand taxes.
Imagine you and me getting handed $1,000 a month.
I know.
God, would have been a bad idea.
Agreed. And so, but taxes, like they've got to be educated on all this stuff. Like you got to put a certain amount aside because or pay a certain amount right away. In other words, you've got to be educated. Otherwise, they're going to spend all this money and then $300,000 in taxes.
Okay,
that's a lot.
Wow. So I didn't realize that if I wanted to hire somebody at Temple, whatever, to bring up a team we were talking about, and tell him to come out and help me sell my product or something, do some commercial or appearance or whatever, I can just still to this day just treat him as I could anybody else. I could hire him as a promotional marketing or her.
And go through the school, and they probably have a place online. You could click on his name, his or her name, Susie or Bobby, and it goes right to them. You propose the deal. The school sees the deal. They vet the deal. The kid says yes or no. Yeah.
Right. Because the school has to know anything over $600, I think. At least that's what I saw.
If it's an actual non-collective situation.
Okay. So that's a non-collective. The collective is just.
Right. Right now, it's pretty much free for all.
Right.
But there's trouble created from that, though. Let's think about this.
Yeah.
Because of promises versus contracts.
Right.
So there's been situations, and I don't know who's read about the Florida State situation, men's basketball, where last year 4 players actually boycotted practice because they claimed they weren't getting their payments.
Right.
for NIL. And I think Leonard Hamilton, they're suing the school. And
Yeah.
Leonard Hamilton, I don't look, I didn't read deep enough, and I don't want to misspeak. But Leonard Hamilton's probably saying, who promised you this?
Right. Right. Yeah. And they were probably promised it, but they weren't. If they were, they probably weren't given an agreement, because part of it is you can't use it. I mean, you can't use it to recruit players. Okay. Right. Like, well, let's be realistic.
It's straight bribery, Cope. Yeah, you
right.
can. Well, yes, you are. They are. I don't know if you can or can't. Who cares?
Yeah. I think the NCAA says you're not allowed to.
Yes.
And right. We all. It's
straight. It's straight. It's straight pay for play, and it's straight negotiations versus highest bidder. Okay, let's go now to Rick Pitino. Did you see what Rick Pitino said the other day after the Seton Hall victory?
No.
Okay. St. John's has Seton Hall's one of their best players from last year.
Okay.
Because they paid him a lot of money.
Right.
St. John's beats Seton Hall. And I give Pitino a lot of credit for this. He goes in the press conference and says, look, Shaheen we have more money. If the money was equal, that kid would have stayed and played for the coach he went there for. But because we just offered him a lot more money, he lost him.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, in other words, it's not equal playing ground. It's not right. And he was the winning coach, by the way.
Right. He was the beneficiary of it. I did not see him say that.
Yep.
That's fascinating. Wow.
The other coach that came out the other day with an interesting statement was Rick Barnes. So one of his players, Lanier, I believe is his last name, probably one of his highest paid players, I think did something bad or messed up some important play or missed a shot or whatever. And Barnes basically said in the press conference, well, that's what we pay him to do. Make that shot.
Yeah. This is where we are.
Yes.
It's where we are. And it's not, it's insane, right? Let's be realistic. It's insane. And I do think, and you would know better than I would, there's going to be some governance coming into place because there has to be.
It's completely, and this $20 million coming July 1st to these schools. Let me talk to you about that for a second.
Yeah.
So because now what has happened since that ruling is all of a sudden there's some Title IX issues coming in. Again, right. They didn't foresee. I don't know if because look, of the $20 million, who's getting the money? Football, men's basketball, and yes, some other athletes. But those two, because they're the revenue producers, they're going to get the most of the $20 million. Well, where does Title IX sit with all that if it's coming from the university now, not from this collective? Right. So that's an issue. The other thing is, how is each school going to divide up? Like, is Alabama going to give $19 million to football and $1 million for everybody else? Is Texas Tech going to give $12 million for football and $8 million for everybody else? Is Kansas going to give $8 million to men's basketball and $10 million to football? Who knows?
Right.
But so that's a whole nother kind of thing that's coming up. But they're good, and I don't know how that looks either. I don't know how those payments are, Cope. I don't know if they're monthly, yearly, if they're up front. I don't know how that. I don't understand. I don't know what that's like coming from the schools yet.
Yeah. So that's when we talk about this being a moving picture with massive changes, and we've talked about sort of the reality of what's going on, particularly at big programs right here. Like we've been using Scott's been using specific people that we all, if you're a sports fan, Rick Pitino. If you're not a hoops guy, you might not know Rick Barnes, but you probably do. He's a big time coach, hoops coach. But okay, so and the funny thing is, Scott, like that collective stuff, that's none of that is name, image, or likeness at all. That's just pay to play. Where do you think? Best guess, because it's hard to tell. But where do you think this is going? In 5 years. Let's take.
Okay, here's where I think it's going. It's going to the Power Four conferences, whatever those 60 schools, breaking off onto their own. No NCAA. Have a commissioner, revenue share, salary cap. Nick Saban, commissioner, whatever James Franklin was saying.
Yeah.
kind of funny, but he would be perfect. But anyway, someone like that, there will be no NCAA. It will be, and I think that's where it's going. It's going to be the haves and the have-nots. Now, what does that mean? Can the lines cross and the schools still play? If that happens, then I don't know. But I think eventually it's going to break off those schools and away from the NCAA.
Yeah. Would you look at that as that's a minor league. It's just a major league revenue potentially. Minor. It makes sense. And you hear people talking about this, and I would not be shocked either, because it's not going to be in Texas A&M's best interest to be in the same conference as or to be in anything associated with like Southwest Missouri State. Like what are they going to care? Like those aren't the same. You and I have talked about this a million times. Like, people who follow college sports don't have a great understanding of the difference of certain places and how things are done.
Well, let me give you an example of my place.
Yeah.
And probably why I'm on this podcast and not coaching.
Right.
I'm serious.
I'm
on a school, Rice University, that wants to move up conferences to the American Athletic Conference. Well, that's what the big boys. Even Conference USA was very good. Don't get me wrong, but money wise, the AAC is going to give the schools more money. So Rice wants more money. So they want to be better. They would say they want to be better in sports, but yet they didn't want to have NIL. So I had a recruiting class with players that I couldn't give a penny to, when Memphis is giving kids $500,000 or $1 million a year.
Right.
And so Mike,
I
had a bad year because I couldn't put together a roster that was on a fair playing field with the other schools.
Yeah. By the way, when it is nothing's really truly fair, but when it was at least relatively even, you won and you got players. It's not like you didn't have players. You got guys in there, and then we see what happens.
Like how many? Okay, like Quincy Oliveri. Oliveri has a 5th year, right? He has a 4-year career at Rice. He's a terrific player for me. He has a Rice degree, and he averages 18 points a game his senior year. Well, 18 points a game at the mid-major in the open market's worth $250,000 or more, whatever.
Right.
And so he had all these schools, Texas, blah, 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 and Xavier's, where he ended up going. Because Quincy, I knew he had to leave. I couldn't, if I could have paid him half that, he would have stayed, but I couldn't get him anything. And so I helped him with Xavier. Sean and I are, friends. It worked out great. I couldn't be happier for the kid. He made the NBA, and, Sean had the leading scorer in the league.
Yeah.
But
that's reality now. As all this money, I mean, there was always money in it, and it flooded in. And now it's flooding in and unregulated. And it's interesting. I'm still coming back to not realizing the difference between a collective and what I would call a direct.
Think of it this way. Direct, go through the school to reach the kid. Collective calls the kid and negotiates a deal based on the conversation with the coach.
Yeah. So if I wanted to hire a kid to do a commercial for me, I don't go to, I could go to the collective, but I wouldn't. I'd go to the school.
Go through the school to reach the kid. Yeah.
All right. There. That's interesting. So Scott, then how do you, it's funny.
And that may have changed, Cope, in a year. By the way, I've been out.
Yeah. As of today, we think it's.
Well, maybe you can just talk to the kid. I don't know, but I think like at Rice, they wanted those to go, like I know Quincy had a deal with a pizza and wing shop.
Right. Perfect.
They went through. It was an Open Doors, I think was the name of the company.
It's open source. It's open source, I think, isn't it?
Something like that. And they go on, they click on his name because the whole roster's there. And here's negotiate the deal with whatever. School sees it, schools approve it. Quincy gets free wings for life, whatever it was.
Right. And so that's what's so funny.
And he did weekly posts on Instagram. Man, wings are awesome, whatever.
Right. And the pizza, by the way, people think like, oh, that's not going to help the pizza. Yeah, it does help the pizza place. It does. Absolutely.
It's advertising.
Right. And it's interesting, and it's local, and it's athletes. Yeah. And that's why, like you and I discussed, we didn't talk about med device. I'm convinced some of these small med device companies I work with, if they're innovative, I mean, I, you and I haven't had a chance to talk about it, but we have some friends at Hershey Chocolate. I'm waiting to hear back. Reese's ran a whole NIL program for kids with the last name Reese. And I don't know if they just gave them free candy or if they gave them, I don't know what they gave them.
I wonder what they gave him.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out. I hope to find out because, and did they get, my next question to them is, and did they get what they hoped they were going to get? And what I talked to a guy who does marketing for Hershey, and what they were talking about is they're not trying to be able to turn around and say, hey, we got a 8x return on investment from our $10,000 or whatever. They're trying to say, did we get into the understanding of the people that we're trying to get into, which is that age group. They're like, we like athletes and we want athletes who need sugar because they're the high energy.
They're a Final Four sponsor or have been.
Yeah, and have been. Yeah. So like that's, believe it or not, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, one of their hardcore demographics that they're trying to reach is that level athlete, that age. It's really, it was not intuitive.
57-year-old men in Houston too.
They kind of got us locked up, don't they? But all right. So then, oops, hang on, Scotty.
Yep.
How do we handle, how about this? Like, this is what I think about. So then you got Olivia Dunn that walks into your gymnasium because she's an LSU gymnast or whatever. She's got 8 million TikTok followers, 4 million. And part of the NIL stuff originally was when Olivia came to college and she had a business or she was selling something or the twins that played at USC that went to Cavender. Yeah. So they walk in they're running businesses already. And they come and get an athletic scholarship. At least I think they got them. And they had to give that up while they were in college 20 years ago, didn't they? Like, were they allowed to have that job? Because I'm not sure they were allowed to.
Probably not. Before this ruling, probably not.
Right? So that's what was so interesting is social media has made it so that you have you occasionally you can have kids walking in with 500,000 followers because they open Christmas gifts on YouTube, right? And they've created this business, and they also happen to be a really good lacrosse player, and they go to Duke, and they now they can continue getting paid on that.
Don't you think Bronny James had some easy NIL deals at USC? Imagine.
Yeah, of course.
10 million followers.
Yeah, well, I mean, Shador Samuel, and that's the other thing. Sanders, you see all those folks, Caitlin Clark on insurance commercials, Bryce Young on was it Dr. Pepper?
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember what they were. Right?
NIL, but that's NIL. Yeah. That's
what true name, image, and likeness
supposed to be.
Yeah, right. So
Quinn Ewers, he was on it.
Yeah, so Bryce it's Young, different. Yeah. It's different than the collective, which is sort of
pay for play.
Which is described as NIL, but technically it isn't.
It's not.
Right?
Pay for play.
Yeah. So do the pay for play, do any of them have some sort of conscience where they feel like, hey, we're going to pay $500,000 to Q, your guy, and he's got to at least come to an elementary school once a month and redo them, or is there any of that?
I mean, maybe some, maybe. Look, for example, I did a couple at Rice, okay, that I had to get a kid committed to come play for us, and another kid is a freshman I wanted to keep.
Right.
But the rest of the team didn't even know these two guys had NIL deals. But I told the collective, the head of it, one of my ex-players, that look, they got to do public service twice a month, and they got to send pictures to you of them doing it.
Yeah.
Now that was up to the collective head of him to do it and run it and commit before he give them their checks that they did it. But there was a lot of that at the beginning, Cope. It was minor. I at least wanted to be able to say at Rice, these kids were doing this. It's straight pay for play 99% of the time. Right.
Okay. So let's go then. And that's basically boosters in essence. Boosters now having a legitimized funnel through which they could pay kids.
Yeah. So here's the issue that's going to come up. And especially now, the reason I said this spring, it's so lucrative for the football transfers. Okay. Because of all the extra money. Well, if you're listening to this and you're saying, well, what do you mean, Scott? Where's the money going to go? Well, here's where it's going to go. If I'm Joe Donor and I'm giving Coach Copeland or to his collective $1 million, and Coach Copeland has his quarterback who throws 10 touchdowns and 25 interceptions, and I give $1 million for the kid, you think, and then you come to me next year and say, hey, Scott, can I have $1 million for another quarterback? I'm going to be like, no. Right. No, you're an idiot. But hold on. And plus, not only that, no, the school has $20 million. Why do you need my money now?
Right. Right.
So that's why I'm saying next spring, that collective money is going to go down because they know the school is 20 million. You just can't keep squeezing these people for money, Cope. They're just not going to keep giving it.
No. The only thing I do, use your example, Joe Donor. I like Joe Donor. I've been kissing up to you, Joe Donor, for a couple years now, and I appreciate that, Millie.
Yeah, you're a pain in my ass.
Just, I like how the roles are reversed. Does the do you like if you're the donor, am I giving you access to the team, better tickets? What do you get for that? Generally, like, is there anything that's sort of understood like in that to benefit?
No, I mean, you look. That's I think a lot of coaches' choice is what they want to do. Like we used to do promotions at Rice with donors for them to donate to the basketball program before NIL, and that was join the team, come on the flight, be in the locker room, be a part of team meal. As just a I don't
to be close to the program.
Yeah, they got to be careful with that though. But certain ones just are Cope. Like I know some guys, and I won't name names, but in the Big Ten, and not Mike. So I don't want people to think it's Penn State because I know Mike. It's not Penn State. That has a guy that basically is the NIL. He is like, you guys are a billionaire. They don't need anybody else. So he has access to whatever he wants in the program.
Right. Okay.
He flies the coach around on his private jet. He is on the team plays. He does whatever he wants because he is the bank.
Right. And that's what he enjoys. And that's what he wants to put money towards.
He basically talks to the head of the collective, or maybe he even is the head of the collective, and he asks the coach, "Who do you want? How much do we want to pay him? I'll go. Let's go."
Yeah. So okay, talk to me about general managers at these universities. Famous guy, Woj, Adrian Wojnarowski, who was the guy on ESPN for NBA, hung it up, had some health issues, left, and is at St. Bonnie running their collective, I guess it is. Is that what he's doing? Is he technically running their collective, or is he a general manager?
He's a general manager. I think he probably has. Look, I don't know for fact, but I'm sure he has complete. He can help. I'm sure he is hand in hand with whoever is in charge. If he isn't, because he is the one. What is he spending his days doing? Looking for kids that they can try and get out of the portal when they go in the portal, what the market value is, and he's also, helping recruit their own players to stay, renegotiate deals when the year's out. To keep, let's say Bonovich, I think they're like 13 or 14-4. They're having a good year. Yeah. Well, let's say if they have a junior, right, who's averaging, I don't know their roster, but let's say if a junior averaging 15 points a game and they're paying him $300. Well, part of Woj's deal is to say when this season ends, before he goes to Michigan for $1 million, will you stay here for $600? Like, what number keeps you here?
Right. Who represents the kids in this?
Oh, that's a whole nother mess. Okay.
I knew if I brought it up, it was going to get sideways.
This has a lot of people upset because a lot of people look in any of these situations where there's money, there's greed. Mm-hmm. Now, also, there are, like in every business, your business, my business, candy business, there's good people and bad people, right?
Right.
So now there's agents. Well, these kids hire these agents, try and recruit these kids that they know are going to make big money and are basically charging 20%. And their rationale is I'm only getting 20% on it may be $1 million, but it's only going to be once. It's not like 4% over a 5-year, $80 million contract in the pros.
Right.
That leads to the next issue here. All this stuff is so transactional. And the reason the coaches are so frustrated by it, because it's all 1-year stuff. Like replacing 10 guys every year becomes impossible. Well, challenging to say the least. And to the point where Tony Bennett, Nick Saban, Jim Larinaga, Mike Krzyzewski, they don't want to deal with it.
No. And you can't blame them.
No. Why would you?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
if I'm 70 years old and all the money I could ever need, I'm in the Hall of Fame with what?
Yeah.
What? Some kid, we lose in the Final Four, and the next day, kids in my office saying, I want 500 more thousand, or I'm leaving.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So is there, okay. So I've always been on the side where it would bug me when you'd see these kids have to give up these businesses, or they couldn't do certain things. They weren't able to because of their name, image, and like you described, James selling jerseys, Eddie O'Bannon.
Well, ASU was selling jerseys. James wasn't.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah. ASU selling James jerseys, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen plenty of those examples, and I understand. I always thought like this is a big business, and people would balance it with, yeah, well, he's getting a free education. And my response was always like, yeah, let me know. Like when I was in college and I had a lab at 3:00, Coach Evans said, go to the lab because you're at the Division III basketball program. You're not in scholarship. You go to lab and then you get your rear end down to the gym. That is not how things are set up at Division I, Division II, and many Division IIIs now. Like you don't schedule the lab at all because that's the window in your sport. And it's way different at the Division I level. And I always thought that was a little bit of I understood the argument. I just never felt like people who were dialed in and understood the requirements of these athletes didn't seem to make that as much a big deal that they're getting a free education. Rice is different because that's a different place. That's an Ivy League place. It just happens to be in Houston, Texas. So is there good though? Like what good is coming out of this? And what did you see any good coming out of this?
Look, I am not against the kids getting paid. So they're just with no true regulating entity. We have this, call it a mess, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Free for all, Wild West.
Yeah. So the revenue sharing, because that's what that $20 million is that's coming to every program, right? Is revenue sharing out of the money raised TV rights. Is that where?
Well, let me tell you this. I don't know where the money. I know the schools themselves can pay the players starting July 1. $20 million is the budget. Where each school got it, I guess, is from TV.
That would be my.
You see this? Indiana is laying off 20 or 25 athletic department employees.
No, didn't see that.
Yeah, that just came out 2 days ago because on July 1 they got this $20 million to give the athletes. They're not going to do. They're not.
So they got to go find $20 million out of their current budgets because they don't. I suspect it's coming from revenue sharing, but I'll bet it's TV, not clearly defined.
Football
right?
TV, but yeah. But so Indiana's laid off. Athletic department workers are being let go.
Yeah, this is insanity.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And by the way, we didn't even talk. Like, let me know when you want to get to the coach's seat of all this.
Well, let's do it. Let's do it right now.
It's like, imagine, like, I used to tell people all the time before this that, 20% of my job was actually coaching. Now it might be 2%. I mean, because all you're doing is who's in the portal, who might go in the portal, who are we paying, how much, who are we paying next, where are we getting the money, who do I need to meet, where do I need to go, who do I need to beg for money, who do I need? It's nonstop, everything but X's and O's, coaching, watching film, and doing what you love to do. And then people's argument is, well, you get paid a lot of money, right? Okay. Yeah, you do. I agree in a lot of cases. But that money can also be, short term. So you better be really smart with your money. Or if you, by the way, weren't making money for the first 35 or 40 years of your life, so that argument just depends. I get it. People see $10 million a year for Steve Sarkisian. That's a hard argument to go against. Tough shit, Steve. Deal with it. Right. But the guy at Texas Southern isn't the case.
No, it's not. And again, nobody should be shedding tears for any of these coaches, you included, right? Like, you're not asking anybody.
No.
But there is a window where you're working to your 34, 35, and you've been making $12,000, $18,000 a year grinding, and you finally jump up in class and start to make some money. But
it could be for 4 years. And then what?
Right.
Now, that's just an example. Look, the big money people are the big money people. Nobody sheds a tear for them. And by the way, you're right. I don't nobody should shed one for me either. I'm just pointing out, I'm just making points in this conversation of the coaching part of it. It's a lot of stress already, a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're dealing with so much other bullshit. It is unbelievable.
So the general manager, if a place gets a general manager, which we're seeing pop up in a lot of places,
eventually every Power Five will have one.
Is going to have one. If they don't already, I'm going to guess that 70% of them do, and those that don't are asleep at the switch. That person's job is to sort of handle that. You went from 20% to 2%. It's that 18%.
All that off the head coach's plate.
Right.
Send me to speak at the Kiwanis Club. Send me to negotiate with the agent. Send me, not me, the GM. To watch recruit out of the portal and give you 10 names in each position. Yeah.
And for people who don't know what the portal is, NCAA a couple of years ago opened up. You used to, if you want to transfer, you had to sit out a year. You lost a year of eligibility. Now it's open portal. You're not happy, you can leave today.
Even if you are happy, just leave for more money.
Yeah. But if you're not starting or not getting paid enough or both, or you woke up on the wrong side.
4 years will happen all the time now.
Yep, all the time. So it's
fans hate it, by the way, Cope.
What's that?
Fans hate it.
Yeah, I know.
Because it's not even like pro sports. At least I know if I'm a Commanders fan, Jaden Daniels is my quarterback for the next 5 years. He can't go anywhere.
Right.
Well, these guys in college, they're here 1 year, 9 months, 6 months. Nobody gets to know anybody. They're hard to root for, not because they're not great kids. They are great kids, most of them.
It's funny. It's closer to the D League or G League setup than it is like I was reading about Finch when he was in the G League, and they're a guy we know, and they were talking about like you would have 25 guys throughout a year on a 12-man roster, and the minute they signed their contract, they did everything they could to get out. They're trying to go get promoted to the NBA, and there are some similarities to that, which is we're going to see some corrections, I think.
Yes,
partly because there's so much money in this that people want to enjoy college sports.
And one thing I think would be multi-year contracts.
Yeah, which is professional sports. That's what this is. It's just not the NFL, Major League Baseball.
Yeah, there's no CBA yet. There's no players union yet. There's no collective bargaining yet. Yet. Yeah. So things have changed. So, okay, man. And again, we should caution everybody. In 2 months, this all might be completely changed. I don't know when this is being aired, but
I'm trying to get it out this weekend, so it's still topical
before things change.
TikTok will have been turned on and off 6 times between us doing this and you.
It's just it's such an interesting time, and people have said to me, a lot of people have said to me, are you sure? Like, are you sure you want to go? You want to do this again? And my answer to that is, for me, it's easy because at Rice, for so many years, even up until the last year when I needed NIL, but I was never a thing. Like Max Fiedler, I didn't need to worry about. He came to Rice because he wanted a Rice degree. I mean, and I found some guys, Quincy Oliveri, Trey Murphy, they weren't being recruited by any other schools. We got some gems, right? So these kids were loyal to me, and for the most part, even though Trey left during COVID, but Quincy 4 years, Max 5 years, Travis 4 years, Cam Sheffield 4 years. I can name a ton. But so I didn't deal with it a ton. So yes, I do want to kind of do it again, and I kind of want to take it without my hands tied behind my back, and let me see. Let me have a little,
because
playing field.
I think anybody that listens to this discussion we've had, you can understand why there are certain people who don't want their university to do this stuff, to be involved in it. And I think you ran into that. You don't have to talk about it, but I think there are schools that say, why would we have to pay kids to come to our school? And a lot of the Ivy is like that, right? I mean, that's their mentality.
Yeah, and they're in a league together, Cope. Like Rice is in a league with nobody like them.
Yeah.
But yet Rice is saying we're not doing this because it's a Rice degree. I'm like, well, then you're going to get smashed.
Best of luck going against Memphis.
Well, it's just not even. You have to, at some point, if you want to jump into that water, you've got to have a bigger boat.
Yeah. So, all right. So now I'm going to slow this baby down.
Okay.
So Copeland, some local business guy, comes, and Pera is now the head coach at whatever university is in my hometown, and I like him, and I want to be involved sort of with the program, but I also want to sort of promote my business, right? So I come to you. Well, let's say I come to you because we happen to know each other. I'm like, Scott, I want to sponsor. I want a couple of your guys to come over and do some spots for me. And I'm going to put some money in their pocket, but they're coming and they're spending a day. We're filming stuff. We're going to do some cool things. That because I'm going to use their name, their image, and their likeness to promote my business in whatever way. I know you don't have any issues with that. How is that best done? What have you seen, good or bad? Because I might pick your small forward who doesn't even start because he's got half a million TikTok followers.
Yes.
This is what people don't understand. You can actually do this at Division III. And guys are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, because this kid has, if I wanted to do that.
Maybe he's a good juggler and he juggles on TikTok and people think it's funny and everybody loves him.
Yeah.
That's hard for people of our generation to understand, Cope.
Yes.
Fortunately, my daughters are teenage. TikTok is a right thing. Your daughters, I'm around college athletes all the time. I've gotten to understand it, whether I like it, dislike it, doesn't matter. Yes, you're exactly right. You would be smart to not go after necessarily my two best players, to look at all their Instagram followers or TikTok followers and whoever has the most, because that's where the eyes are. You're getting more bang for your buck on having them do the spots.
Yeah. And if you do it in a memorable way, I was talking to, my wife, I was talking today that if I do something, it's going to be to make my business memorable because I don't have a big brand name out there. I'm always working with small med device companies that nobody knows. So if we come up with some things that go, hey, everybody with the last name Reese, we're giving them Reese's, but whatever, and then people remember that. My audience remembers that. That wins at the end of the day. And you can still do it so inexpensively if you're clever that I don't have to buy TV spots when I've got, frankly, social media is the single cheapest distribution model in the history of mankind.
Yes.
Right. So have you seen anything did you have any of your players that had things like that they were able to parlay into this stuff? Did you you dealt with smart kids. Nobody's smarter than Max Fiedler, that big kid for you. That guy's, he's designing rockets next year or something. So did you see any of that?
No,
anybody.
No, well, only to the analogy I gave about Quincy and his local restaurant.
Yeah.
There is value, I think, for people in your world based on view. It's just clicks. It's clicks. It's views, and that at the end of the day, that's all it comes down to. And all any advertiser cares about how many people are seeing whatever it is I am trying to convey.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a friend who runs an orthopedic distributor, and he's a University of Richmond basketball fan. And he did a real early, I don't even know if he would call it an NIL thing, but he basically had one of their big guys who used a knee brace that he sold. And he just said that, like, this dude was very funny. You'd enjoy him, Scott. Goes out in like an old uniform that's too tight, and he's like standing next to the kid, like he's gonna have the kid show him. He's gonna teach this kid how to shoot. Like it was actually very funny. And then he starts talking to the kid about, hey, I know you have this knee brace. It's helped you. Could you tell people how that, because we sell it to orthopedic offices or whatever. Could you tell them how it's helped you? And this kid says, yeah, let me recover faster, blah, blah, all this stuff. And he used it as a promotional video. Although I don't know how much, like I actually want to ask him how much he used it. But I thought it was clever. And I called him and I was like, what did you want to get out of it? He's like, I really wasn't worried about return on investment. I just wanted to I liked the kid. I wanted to help the program. And I thought it would be something that was funny. And like it checked all those boxes.
Put a little money in the kid's pocket. And
Right. And he liked the program. He likes Mooney. He's friends with Mooney. He likes that. So
he just basically did that instead of calling up the collective and saying, here's $5,000 for Jimmy.
Right. Yeah. And he got to know the kid. And it was fun. He was in it, and it was funny.
Yeah.
I think he filmed it on his cell phone.
That's using the kid's name and image to
promote a product. Yeah. So, all right. Anything else you think we didn't cover? Like, what are the nuts and bolts? I'm trying to think of what people ask me. Yeah.
Well, the contracts are interesting. Like, what promises are made by whom? UNLV quarterback,
right?
Okay. Florida State basketball. Who made the promises? How were they sent? Text message, email, or was there a contract written? And if so, who has the contract? I mean, because look, it's pretty simple. If there's a contract written that says you're going to pay me X amount of dollars a month for 6 months, and you don't, you have no leg to stand on. So
you're in breach of contract. Yeah,
correct. So that's where some of this stuff becomes. See, I think an assistant coach at UNLV made the promise. The head coach said, "I don't even know what you're talking about." That's why they're like, so those things get, you better be in the same page with everybody and because it's that wild, Cope. It's that crazy.
And it was thrust upon people 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it just sort of hit like a tsunami. Yeah. People did not know it was coming. And then all of a sudden,
tsunami ever, it's still coming. Yeah. It's a never ending tsunami.
The waves are still hitting the beaches, and they are, it's caused mayhem. And it's so interesting that I hear a lot of people talking about NIL, but whenever I talk and say, oh yeah, I learned this from Scott or Mike or somebody else, and it's changed, they're fascinated, and they actually don't know any of this. So I told you, part of this, I wanted to have this conversation with you because I'm interested in it. I think it's interesting. And I have a lot of people in my audience who I think will find this informative. Because we're all watching this game tonight. We're all watching the NCAA tournament.
Information is key, right? The more you have on anything, the more decisions and judgments you're able to make to help your own business. And look, I hope in 2 months I'm a head coach again, and I hope whoever's watching this wants to call me up and say, "Hey, coach, I
like the cut of your jib. Let's do something for that program."
Hey, coach, how can I help your players?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I'm looking at this. So just for people, so they know what kind of money we're talking about for the biggest collegiate athletes. So I think Shedeur Sanders, he was listed at one point as the highest because he made $4.7 million. I think doing like Nissan ads. And this is, Deion Sanders' kid.
I think he bought his left tackle a $200,000 car.
Well, the guy's important. He's important. He keeps Shedeur standing upright. The Cavender sisters made a couple million. They are twin sisters, athletes, played at USC and then transferred to Florida.
Miami, I thought.
Miami. You're right. Miami. But here's another one. Like Olivia Dunn has also been listed, the LSU gymnast, whose boyfriend is the next stud pitcher in Major League Baseball. But there was a barbecue joint in Arkansas that sponsored the entire Arkansas offensive line, right? Makes sense. Um, Apparently, the Iowa women's team last year had a fireworks company sponsor them, which makes sense.
Well, that's the right,
Yeah.
that case, that's non-collective stuff.
Right. It's straight NIL. That's why you see Caitlin Clark in commercials
Yeah.
still when she was in college because she was getting NIL. But like nobody, I'm going to not talk like that anymore. Not too many people relative to football, basketball, and some other sports follow women's gymnastics. But the interesting thing is, a lot of the largest money makers are in women's sports, ones that don't necessarily have the biggest TV deals like this Olivia Dunn. And she came to college with like 3 million TikTok followers. She was in what you and I know as an influencer because I know that's what
she's really smart.
Yeah. And she's really smart. So I think this stuff is fascinating. What else are we missing? What are we missing that people ask us about? What do the kids have to do for their money? Well, there's nothing they have to do from the collective.
Make baskets or throw touchdowns.
Throw it to the right guy.
Block, tackle.
Right. And but the NIL stuff is, to me, it's just like, it's marketing. You just open up a whole new group of people that you couldn't do marketing and promotion with previously.
Yeah, some of these kids are very well known, big, great players, small towns with a lot of people that you put them in, they're sponsoring your car dealership or your restaurant. They're like, okay, I'm going to check that out.
Well, I see the D lineman for Penn State, Abdul Carter, is on one of HHR, hurt in a car, call HHR, and Abdul Carter's on it. And that's a true NIL deal.
That's what the whole thing was intended to do.
Right. Which I think, I won't speak for you. I actually never had a problem with that.
No.
It's the pay for play. That's what we should start calling. There's an NIL side and then there's a pay for play side.
Period. And, that's it. Correct.
Right. I mean, that's what it is.
That's it.
So my takeaways are, I didn't realize it was that clear of a differentiator.
In recruiting, for example, when a really big name goes in the portal and the kid's looking for the biggest deal, here's what it goes. His agent calls up 4 schools the kid's interested in. What are you willing to pay him? And if Ohio State says 1 million, Michigan says 2 million, Notre Dame says 3 million, Penn State says 4 million, he's going to Penn State for 4 million. That's a recruitment. Getting to visit the campus.
You know what that is, Scott? That's not recruiting, by the way. That's free agency. Like, that's what that is, right? That is unfettered free agency.
That's what it is.
Which is, that's.
And then what you hope is, if you're one of the underbidders, that the agent will come back and say, well, before he commits, what is the number? Oh, 1 million. I was just kidding. 4.1 is what I meant.
Did I say 1.4? I meant 4.1.
Correct.
Well,
and Michigan got the $1 billion donor to get the kid Underwood. What they gave him, 12 million. He's a high school senior.
Yeah. That's. I can understand why people have a bit of a problem with this, but this is where they are. A couple, I remember I can't remember the Baycott, the big kid who played for North Carolina.
Yeah, Baycott. Yep.
2 years ago.
Yep.
So he was projected to be a late second round NBA pick.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was going to sign for, but it was probably it might have been 1.5 million for 2 years.
Less than what it was to go to North Carolina.
He stayed at North Carolina because he made a business decision because he was going to make considerably more at North Carolina than going to the NBA. Yeah. So did he transfer to Kansas as part of that? Yeah.
And came back for this year because of what they're paying him. I mean,
so as they say on those goofy NCAA commercials, we all go professional in something, but this is that side of it is so. All right, so people's takeaways should be they are two different things, and we don't know that. But
and as a donor, you could do either one.
Yeah, you could do both if you want.
Both.
Yeah, I would rather. I mean, personally, I'd rather get something out of it.
Most people would say that, but a lot of people don't care, Cope. They want the team to win.
Yeah, I want that. That's
Auburn football wants Auburn to win. Here's $1 million.
Hey, I'm miserable when Dickinson doesn't beat Gettysburg. I'm irritable for 2 days.
Well, if you have $50 million and you're an Auburn booster and you want a quarterback that's better than the one you had because you just went 5-7, then you give him $1 million
Yeah. Yeah.
to the Go Tiger Fund.
This is might be the definition of insanity. And I can't remember who it was who said it, but like, you have made a living based, relying on the decision making and maturity of 18 to 22-year-old males, which I do not think is a great business model that people want to replicate, but you've managed to do quite well.
I'm not complaining. Just hoping to do it one more time.
And do it one more time, baby. All right, man. Listen, I love it. Well, I know we'll be talking about this. Hopefully it helps you, but I think my audience is going to find what you had to say fascinating and so deep inside. I love it.